The biggest problem most aspiring writers have is structure and plotting, spending months wrestling with overwhelm that leads to self-doubt and lost motivation. Writing takes hours and plotting is hard, but after more than 13 years as a professional editor, writing coach and story producer working on hit TV shows, I've helped dozens of production companies and writers of all experience levels achieve professional success and industry acclaim. And I've picked up lots of ways to simplify professional writing for the fastest route to industry-ready writing that actually stands out, but none of them compare to the number one mistake most new writers are making that every honest pro writer knows is BS. So in less than 10 minutes, I'm going to reveal what this myth is, how the truth speeds up your process and boosts your chance of success, and I'll break down how you can write any story in any medium you want so you can stop spinning your wheels. And keep watching to the end to know how I took this process further and turned what takes writers years to get right into something you can achieve in less than 10 minutes. Every story is a process of change. This change is either happening to your protagonist or they're triggering change in the world and lives of the people around them, depending on the type of character and story arc you've chosen to write. But without change, there is no story. And what a story is truly about, what gives meaning to the totality of its events, is the theme or the central idea it ultimately exists to explore. Events don't equal a story, and without a theme, it will be a hollow experience. And if you don't know what yours is, you'll learn how to extract it by the end of this video too. Now, how your story starts depends on the medium you're writing. If you're writing for the screen, you'll have an opening scene or sequence which is going to need to communicate the initial promises that your story is offering to your audience about what this journey and story experience is going to involve and explore. That means establishing the genre, the tone, establishing or hinting at what that theme might be, and doing all of this in some kind of establishing action, whether that's your protagonist doing something that reveals who they are in the process, your antagonist doing the same, both, or some kind of contextualizing action like we have in The Fellowship of the Ring, which doesn't involve the movie's protagonist but gives the vital context so we can understand everything that will follow from Act 1. If you're writing a novel, your prologue and Chapter 1 together have to do the same jobs. You have to be giving your readers the vital context they need to understand and place what follows within a broader context of promises they understand you'll deliver on. And if you are writing a novel with a prologue, check out my prologue video to make sure that yours stands out. After this, every story begins in Act 1 and what we call the ordinary world. And now that we know every story is a process of change, to understand what has changed, we have to know how it all started, right? And this is Act 1's main job, establishing the initial status quo, the world and personal circumstances of your main characters. And the first act has a few essential jobs. You need to reveal your protagonist's initial situation, who they are, what their world is and their belief, what they believe about that world and their place in it, the initial paradigm they're living within, which colors their behaviors. And this belief will typically be challenged in the course of your story. You also need to establish what they want in their life, what they internally desire, the thing that they think will make them fulfilled. And it's a burning desire. And the reason for that is it's going to justify why they'll go through everything you're going to throw at them once your plot kicks in. And if you're wanting to write a story with depth, then we also need a hint at their philosophical point of view. But they might not consciously know what that is. They could be a blank slate like Luke Skywalker, who later adopts his mentor's philosophy. But either way, we always need to understand or have a hint at their wound, a past event, emotional, psychological, physical, all or some of these, something that has deeply affected them, coloring how they see the world, that package of beliefs that you gave them, which in turn inform those initial behaviors. And that wound, that thing that's internal, is going to then be expressed through their external flaws, your way of showing us in a characterful way that something deeper is going on inside them. Once we've got that set up and context, your plot crashes into their life in what we call the inciting incident. This is always something external happening to them that disrupts life as they knew it, and this moment breaks their ability to go back to the old world they were just in because it introduces something that can be understood as a way to fulfill the internal desire you gave them, and ultimately makes it clear that your plot personally personally involves them in some way, so they can't ignore what it's now forcing them to take action about. And this is where the real story begins. When your protagonist answers that call to action, they step into Act 2, the unfamiliar world. Doesn't have to be a new location, but it usually is. It does have to be unfamiliar in some way, and here they will at some point encounter your story's antagonistic force, what stands between them and what they want. And at this stage, they'll usually be overcome or snatch victory with a false sense of confidence. Either way is fine, but the job mechanically of this moment is to show them or remind them what they're really up against, so they can start figuring out how to adapt, and those adaptations bring them to your story's midpoint, the middle of your story, and a major turning point. Mechanically, your protagonist now shifts from being reactive to proactive. They start implementing plans and maybe start achieving some wins. But at this stage, their progress is mostly external. If their arc will see them personally changed by the end of your story, then at this point, they still haven't faced the internal truths about themselves, the wounds effects on their beliefs and behaviors that they will soon realize have been in some way what's ultimately been holding them back from getting what they want. So they're implementing plans, but those at some point are going to fail when your antagonist strikes back harder again with something that undermines the progress they've been making. Their world collapses, and now we're in your all is lost or darkest hour moment, and it's in this moment that your protagonist breaks down, and in that breakdown is forced to look inward, to accept what's broken inside them and decide whether to change, and that inner shift prepares them for the final confrontation, your climax. And it is in your story's climax that your story's theme is revealed through your character's decisions and actions in that moment, their sacrifice or whatever it is that shows us what your story has really all been about. Whether they win or lose, their decisions create permanent change in themselves and or the world around them, depending on your format and choice of arc. And that thematic climax resulting in this change gives meaning to everything that came before and the story overall. The story then resolves with a new status quo. The world or the hero is no longer the same as when we began. And that difference, that transformation, is what proves the story was worth telling and experiencing as a reader or audience. But what's that secret myth holding so many writers back? I'm sure you've heard the idea of writers being either gardeners or architects, plotters or pantsters. Pantsters meaning people who make it up as they go and write by the seat of their pants, and gardeners being people who water ideas with love and hope those grow into something great. Both mean discovery writing. But the brutal reality is that not a single professional writer I've ever met or worked with in over 13 years, meaning someone who's actually making consistent income from their work, is a true discovery writer in the way most of us think. And the reason's simple. You either spend the time upfront outlining something you know will work, or you discovery write in full acceptance. You're signing up for rewrites, restructures, and even page one overhauls if it turns out not to work when that work's done. And that's why the romantic idea of discovery writing only works when no one is paying attention to you yet. Because it's only when you don't have deadlines and budgets, when no one else's time, money, and reputation is being risked on you, that you can indulge the fantasy of having infinite time. Even the writers most people believe are discovery writers, like Robin Hobb or George R.R. Martin, outlined in broad strokes first, and the fact is they had decades of craft experience to build their internal map of how story structure works until it became instinctive and ingrained. Hobb from years of writing novels before the Farseer trilogy, and Martin from learning his craft through decades of working in scripted TV before he turned to novels. And if you're here, that's because you're not quite there yet. So you have to accept that learning structure and outlining is the fastest way to guarantee your story works and protect yourself against wasting your time. The less time you spend guessing what should come next, the faster your writing will stand out and sell. So if you're serious about finishing novels, TV scripts, and movie screenplays that you're proud of, you should use my custom GPT linked in the description, which I've trained on over a decade of industry-proven practical wisdom distilled across my career, and which will help you outline stories in just minutes. And if you want to learn how to master character and story arc development in detail, then you need to watch this free course next, linked in this video here.